Let's talk about our last coach today. Let's talk about Major Applewhite making his major comeback. If you don't know who Major Applewhite was, he's been quite a couple places, right? If you kind of know the history of college football, like in the last 15 years, you should know who Major Applewhite is as a coach. If you go back further than that, you should probably know who Major Applewhite was as a player. He was a pretty okay quarterback for Texas, played under Mac Brown. He was a gritty guy, gritty. Texas fans love him. So he ended up actually being a quarterback's coach at Syracuse, basically right out of college. He kind of got promoted like really fast. Went to Rice, became the OC, and then right away, he was the offensive coordinator, believe it or not, the first one that Nick Saban hired at Alabama back in '07. If you can believe it or not. If you can believe it or not. And then Mac Brown ended up hiring him alongside Brian Harsin to be offensive coordinator there. And then things happened, and then he eventually landed the job at Houston. We know how that turned out. You can call it not successful, but also, I don't know. He got fired. Let's put it that way. Went back to Alabama as an analyst, then was the South Alabama offensive coordinator, and now he's been promoted to the head coaching position. I think Major Applewhite did a really good job with Carter Bradley. I think he did a really good job with Gio Lopez. I think he's familiar with the program. I think the players are familiar with them. I like the hire. I can't help it. I can't help but I'm all right with this. Who like realistically, if you're South Alabama, like who would have been a much better hire? I can't think of a lot of guys off the top of my head that would have been legitimately better hires than
Well,
reasonable hires.
not only that, he's already on staff. Now, how often is a G5 program like South Alabama? Now, with all the respect to the Jaguars there, we love the Jaguars, right? Son of alumni, like we love the
Yes,
Jaguars there
we
down
are
in Mobile,
sons
Alabama.
of some
Of it
the fighting Jags.
exactly. So
USA.
so so we love them down there in the Sun Belt. Now, how often do you have a guy on staff who has major college football experience, right? Not only at the coordinator level, but also at the head coaching level with Houston in taking over a program with unreasonable expectations after Tom Herman took that program to heights it's never seen. And then you went 8-4 and you got blown out by Army, okay, in a weird triple option bowl game, and you got fired. Like that's what happened there. Major Applewhite,
Yeah.
that's the reality. You lost 70-14 in a bowl game. Now I get that. That's inexcusable. Sure. Does it mean he should be fired? I don't know, but I do believe if you're South Alabama and your head coach gets plucked by in-state powerhouse Alabama to be a defense coordinator, and there's nothing you can do about it this late in the cycle, and you have a chance to elevate from within, a guy like Major Applewhite, with not only the name and connections in the South that he has, but also the experience with the players to galvanize that roster and that offense. Like he can. Like I think this is awesome. I do think this is about as good as you could have done for South Alabama.
I agree. And so if you're a young college football fan, I mean, honestly, probably like around our age, if it wasn't for our dad going to South Alabama, we probably like wouldn't have such vivid memories. But if you, this program is like 12 years old. All right. Like when we were kids, like little kids, South Alabama football did not exist. It did not exist. The biggest thing that they had was baseball over at Eddie Stanky Field. That's it. And it was a big deal at South Alabama. The baseball team was the biggest deal that they had there. And all of a sudden, what, 2012, 2013, I don't know what, 2011, whatever it was, they had this program and they were not good. Look, they've had one bowl game in their program's history, and that was this past year against Eastern Michigan. That's one. And Kane Wommack, as good as he did with that South Alabama, I mean, he took them to back-to-back bowl games, sure. But they have 3 years in the Sun Belt Conference total with a conference record of over 500, right? That's not like historically, like that's not great, That's not like elite. But here's the thing, because of the geography of South Alabama, and by the way, if you haven't been on South Alabama's campus, it is beautiful. Their rec centers are huge. Like this is a school that has money. This school has a pretty decent med school. Like the school has money. It's laying around there somewhere, and this is a school that can take off in the Sun Belt. I really, really, really believe that. They've had tons of talent there, like before, just not at every position all at once, if that makes sense. Now at the G5 level, what we've seen be really successful is you hit on a really good defense one year, right? And it happened to coincide with a good quarterback, and you do awesome, right? Or B, you just have a really, really effective offense that's well coached with talent that you bring in that fits your scheme, right? And Major Applewhite, like, I don't believe he had like tons of tools. Like he knows like how to fit into guy. Like he was a guy that needed to fit into a system as a quarterback himself, even though he was pretty good. I just I like the hire man. South Alabama is just a sleeping giant, dude, in the Sun Belt. Sleeping giant in the Sun Belt. The geography is so nice. They have money, man. Like they've had talented players there. NFL players are playing right now. Jalen Tolbert is playing in the NFL. Gerald Everett, or not Gerald Everett. What's his name?
Yeah, Gerald Everett.
Was it Gerald Everett? Gerald Everett,
Hmm.
freaking South Alabama one. Like who knows? Who knows? I mean, Colin Lacey one of these years might get drafted.
Khalil Jacobs going to Bama probably, and that staff there. Talented
Yeah, I
linebacker for South Alabama. Yeah, no, to go off your point there, like this, they just got a brand new stadium a couple years ago, a $70 million stadium. That's beautiful, right on campus there in Mobile. Like their football facilities are awesome. Like we've seen, some of their training facilities. It is beautiful down there. For a G5 program and for a new G5 program, right? 2012, you mentioned, was their first inaugural year in a football team. Now they're getting their funding, they're getting their act together. They hired a guy like Joey Jones, a former Bama guy, just like to kind of get the program started. And he did a couple good things. Steve Campbell did not work out at all. Kane Wommack was a really nice hire. And I do think Major Applewhite will build on that. Like he's called, they call him the son of the I-10 corridor, right? And I-10 is Interstate 10 that runs along the Gulf Coast there just because
right
he's been
through
all over
Mobile,
there.
right
Yeah,
through Mobile.
yeah, exactly, which is hilarious. He's actually named after Major Ogilvy, right? He was the star running back for the Crimson Tide back in the day. So like Major Applewhite has ties down in the South, like we've mentioned. He's putting together a good staff. I guess he's keeping a good staff, really. Um, he's bringing in Paul Petrino from the MAC. I believe Central Michigan. He was up at the um. Oh my goodness, what's his name? What's the head coach there for Central Michigan? Former Bama OC.
I'm drawing a
Jim
blank.
McElwain. I'm so sorry. I'm so
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah,
Jim
yeah, yeah,
McElwain.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
My apologies there. So there's the connection there with Bama. I believe they were on staff together at Bama, or he was the guy right after Major Applewhite. But yeah, he's promoting Rob Ezell. All right, Rob Ezell, the Rob Ezell, Mr. Nick Saban impressionist himself. Which, by the way, if you've not seen that video, go look that up on YouTube. It is hilarious. And obviously Corey Batoon keeping there a very good defense himself. But also, you mentioned Major Applewhite doing more with less, what you have to do with the G5 program. He took over a South Alabama offense that was terrible. That was in the 90s, 80s, and 90s as an offense. In year one, but they were top 40, right? Very, very good. They got better this year. I believe they were top 30. Obviously, they're going to miss a guy like Colin Lacey, who was a stud, but Gio Lopez comes back another year with Major Applewhite. He was a young quarterback last year, kind of thrust in the fire, and we liked him. He did some good things there for him. I love the
Risky was the
continuity.
word that I think we threw around,
We
which I
love the
like. I
continuity.
like a frisky left-handed G5 quarterback.
Yeah, you have to. And obviously, Major Applewhite has that continuity with them on staff, which is very important in terms of terminology and all that going forward for the development of a young quarterback. But also, like what Kane Wommack did is he put together some pretty good talent, which you mentioned you can do at South Alabama. Yam Banks is a guy we'll talk about at Ole Miss. Marcus Robinson, I believe, is Arkansas. Jaden Volzen, a couple other Power Five guys that are going to these Power Five programs because of the talent put together in the Sun Belt there at South Alabama. It can be done, and I do believe this is just fantastic. This is awesome.
Yeah, I genuinely give this grade. I'll give it an A minus. But like,
Well, what's the expectation in terms of like years or wins per year?
good point, good point. I think the expectation for South Alabama fans is like the 6-6, right? Like every other year make a bowl game at least, right? But I think it can be higher than that. Like I think this team can be a perennial problem in the Sun Belt for everyone. I think it can be. And I think Major Applewhite can do it. I think so. We talked about A's meeting or exceeding expectations, B's meeting expectations, C is not meeting expectations. I think I've only given out like one or two C's this whole coaching cycle. I think we've liked a lot of the guys that teams have gotten. And of course, you know, not all of those coaches that we gave uh, the grade meeting expectations are going to meet expectations. Not every single person is going to do that. But I really do believe in Major Applewhite. I think this was just a really, really good hire. I like it. Give me the A minus. It's going to exceed expectations, but like I guess if it was an A, for me, that's like I feel like it's a sure thing,
Mhm.
And I just don't know if this program needs more time because it is still so young. But I do think Major Applewhite could make this program a problem in the Sun Belt, especially with the other coaching turnover at a lot of other those programs. So we'll see. What grade are you giving this?
Yeah, I'm right with you with an A minus. And like you said, I would give it an A plus just because of how excited I am. But I had to temper my expectations because, like you mentioned, I don't think it's a sure thing, especially at a G5 job like it is right now. Like it's hard to win, and it's harder now than ever because of the transfer portal and because of everything going on with conference realignment and all that good stuff. But yeah, you mentioned 6 to 7 wins. If you're making a bowl game for South Alabama, their fans are going to be happy. The boosters alumni is going to be happy there. And like you were really competitive this year in the out of conference, right? You manhandled Oklahoma State, which is the Big 12 runner up a year ago. And obviously you played James Madison tougher than just about anybody not named App State this year. And yeah, the pieces are there for him to do well. I do believe the only thing that does hesitate me is if he does hit, which I guess is a good problem to have if you're South Alabama, is I do believe there is, a guy that he can climb up the so-called ladder of the coaching carousel, like we've seen a lot of these coaches do leave for quote unquote better jobs. And Major Applewhite's a guy that's probably itching to get back to, Power Five, Power Two football in the SEC there. So we'll see what happens there. But yeah, I do think all things considered this was awesome. This was a pretty easy, seamless hire and seamless transition, but it makes a ton of sense. And I believe it's going to hit for South Alabama fans.
Let's talk about their schedule too for 2024. Their out of conference, I believe, is actually quite manageable. You get North Texas, okay. Now, sure, they're getting Chandler Morris, but they're also losing a bit of talent there. And while I believe in Eric Morris, I I still feel like and yeah, sure they're in the American Conference. I think South Alabama's roster, I'd have to go and check it, but South Alabama's roster might be more talented than North Texas's. I can't tell you for sure because I haven't compared the two side by side, but it might be. It might be, if not right up there. Ohio, who loses a ton of players, right? So you lose Curtis Rourke, you lose Saya Bangura, you lose one of your better receivers, you lose some guys on defense. It's gonna be interesting. Then Northwestern State, you should win. LSU, you'll lose. Whatever. In your conference schedule, you don't draw Coastal Carolina. You don't draw James Madison. You do draw Troy, but you get them at home, and they have a new coach there. You do draw Georgia Southern, but you get them at home. You do draw Texas State, but you get them at home. Your biggest problem games, I think, are App State and Arkansas State on the road. And Louisiana and Southern Miss, I think, are certainly manageable. Louisiana won't be easy, but it'll certainly be it'll be a tough game, but they can win that game. So like I'm looking at the schedule and I'm like, they can win pretty much they can win any game on this schedule, I think, except the LSU game, right? So I don't know. I'm not saying it's gonna happen next year, but if Gio Lopez is as frisky as Gio Lopez is, it'd be hard not to believe in this team and what they can really do.
Well, and that's the thing we talked about with a lot. We've done a couple of these coaching carousel videos for the Sun Belt because of these coaches having a lot of success, namely James Madison and Troy moving on to other programs. There's a power gap that's at the top of the Sun Belt right now. You have no idea how those programs are going to look. Now, I believe in Bob Chesney a lot for James Madison. We'll see what Troy does there with their new coach, but there's some wins to be had at the top there. Nobody's unbeatable this year. Nobody's head and shoulders above anybody else in the Sun Belt. There's a lot of good teams, but there's also a lot of wins to be had. Like you mentioned, every game there in the Sun Belt is winnable. And a team like South Alabama with Major Applewhite, could absolutely rise to the top there. And they do avoid, right, James Madison. They do avoid App State. They do
No,
avoid,
they get App State, but they avoid Coastal Carolina.
oh, I'm sorry, thank Coastal Carolina. So yeah, they do have a pretty favorable schedule, and yeah, I love to see the Jaguars get frisky down there in the Sun Belt.